Hey, welcome back to the Marvel Review Countdown. This is day 17. Tomorrow is the premiere for the Black Panther, and this is when this series will end. But first off, let's talk about Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is a funny movie. Let's come out and say that straight off. This movie is hilarious, and there's many jokes that just are just gut-wrenching on how funny they are. But that isn't to say that all of the comedy lands, because this movie has a joke like every other minute, and it gets tiring at first, but this movie tries its best to let the comedy just kind of feel organic and just come off the characters. But I do feel like there are situations where the jokes are just forced, and because of that, a lot of the dramatic tension in this movie isn't really felt, and there's a lot of tragedy in this movie. But because of how this movie is filmed and how the comedy is implanted, none of the tragedy elements in this film actually resonates and feels tragic, which in itself is a tragedy. Because Hela, while she is an amazing and a cool character, as a villain, she does a bunch of stuff that should be considered a huge tragedy. But we don't stick with her. We don't really get to know Hela. We just know she's the big bad, and she has a pretty cliche motivation, and that's it. I mean, you would think she would hate Odin for trapping her, but no, we don't even get so much as an inkling as to what she feels about Odin. I mean, I think she calls him an old fool at the very beginning, but that's about it. And speaking of Odin, Odin has this one moment where it should have been very emotional and very like at least heart pulling, but the way the film films it and the way the environment is it just doesn't feel that way. It feels meh, and that shouldn't be for Odin. On top of that, Asgard. Asgard itself is a huge factor in this film, but the previous two films have not established Asgard as a way for the audience to connect to. And when this film did stuff to Asgard, none of the audience really felt anything for it because we were never really connected to Asgard. And Taika Waititi, the director of this film, didn't really feel like he should have to retread paths that were abandoned in the previous two. So he just kind of did a very bare bone amount of work he needed to do to Asgard for some of us to at least care about it. But to me, it didn't really work because I still didn't feel anything for Asgard, and I just have to move on to Thor because Thor is trying his best to save Asgard, and 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 while Thor at first was in the first few movies, he was very like a mythical god. He was very powerful, and he was very stubborn, and he had like this huge persona to him. In this film, they tone it down, and he's more of a comedy guy. He's more of a comic relief than a mythical god. He still does have them, and in the very final showdown between him and Hela, he does have that mythical god element to him, and that is cool. When that fight comes down, it is epic. I wish it was a bit longer, but it was cool nonetheless. That brings us to the other characters, and the other characters in this film are all very funny, and in my opinion, they're all pretty damn good characters. It's a shame that the other characters in the past films don't get that highlight like the new characters do. Because some people really cared for the old characters, and the way they get treated in this film, oh, for those fans, you may hate it. But personally, this film had a lot of problems, a lot of storylines that just I felt like could have been a bit more expanded, a bit more emotional. It could have toned down the comedy way, way, way more, and film could have been great. One of the greatest films in the MCU, and maybe just one of the greatest films in superheroes genre. But because this comedy in the film is so overbearing, it tones it really just kind of dulls the senses. Therefore, I have to give this film an 8 out of 10. I like this movie. I like this movie a lot. But there are still things that I just can't get past. And that is those emotional scenes that I wish just could have hit more. Anyways, but then again, I'm just a guy sitting by the lagoon enjoying the view. Catch you later, guys.